Hey everybody, I'm the Drink Pro, and today we're reviewing two versions of Baker's Single Barrel. What's up everybody? Kyle the Drink Pro here with you yet again. Thank you as always for liking this video, sharing it with your friends, and please subscribe to the channel. We just passed 850 subscribers. Thank you guys so much for helping make this possible. I'm trying to get to 1,000 though, so send it to your friends, get them to subscribe as well, and it will help me out a ton. As you can see behind me, there's a little change of scenery. I have a small collection of E.H. Taylor up there, and that's why I'm telling myself I'm wearing this bright ass yellow shirt that surely is not good for my skin tone. I'm going to be focusing on E.H. Taylor a little bit in the month of June, much like in May I focused on Four Roses. Now behind me I have E.H. Taylor Small Batch, Single Barrel, a Single Barrel Store Pick, the Rye, and I also have two different versions of the Barrel Proof, the 2019 and the 2020 releases, Batch 8 and Batch 9. I've also got a couple of samples of some of the pretty rare pours out of E.H. Taylor, the Amaranth Grain of the Gods, the Cured Oak, and the 4-grain. There are still other E.H. Taylor releases that I do not have, and if you want me to taste them along with some of these other batches, please reach out to me on my email, on any social media platform, and let's make it happen. I would love to try them. I'd love to include them in this very special E.H. Taylor June. But enough about Buffalo Trace products. Today I'm focusing on a different brand, Jim Beam. Jim Beam has 4 different small batch collections. They have Knob Creek, Basil Hayden's, Booker's, and today's subject, Baker's. Now, I don't recall ever actually reviewing or trying Baker's in a setting where I was being very meticulous in the tasting of the whiskey. So I'm really looking forward to today's video because I get to try something I haven't really put much attention towards. Something that a lot of people, in fact, haven't put much attention towards. Up until 2019, Baker's was a batched product. It was usually in batches of 200 or more barrels. Now, though, it is a single barrel product. And accompanying that release, they've done a really nice redesign of the packaging, and they've released a 7-year and a 13-year, 2 different versions of Baker's, both of them single barrel, and both at 107 proof. Both the 7 and 13-year are 77% corn, 13% rye, and 10% malted barley. Now, I've seen online the Baker's 7-year is retailing around $60 and the Baker's 13 retails around $100. Now, obviously those numbers are MSRPs and not subject to the wild swings of the secondary market, but generally you can find Baker's 7 for not unreasonable prices. I haven't seen much Baker's 13 out there on the shelves though. Now, Baker Beam was the grandnephew of the famous Jim Beam, and he was a little bit less of a dominating presence in the distillery. He really liked the mechanics of making sure the place kept running, but he was more quiet than a lot of his compatriots, which is kind of a fun analogy to the fact that Baker's doesn't get the love of a lot of the other bourbons in the lineup. It's a quiet hero, much like its namesake. Now, Baker Beam was the 6th generation master distiller for Jim Beam, and he spent decades working with the company. I think he actually got his first full-time position in the 50s, but I don't really remember the year. Anyway, he spent all of his life working in all different areas of the warehouse and building up this product, and the person who followed up after he retired was Booker Beam, and Booker was his cousin who wanted to honor him somehow and already had the idea of doing the small batch collection in his mind, so Booker decided to give Baker his own bourbon. All right, that's enough preamble. Let's get to pouring some whiskey. Now, I've got these silly labels on the Baker 7-year, and it sure looks like this is the work of Nate Cooper. So shout out to Nate for providing me with the Baker 7-year. This one's actually 7 years and 1 month. And the Baker's 13 was provided by Keith Jones. Shout out to Keith for sending me this. I appreciate it, brother. Now, this just says it's the 2019 single barrel and it's 107 proof. Actually, both the 7 and 13-year single barrels from Baker's have listed on the bottles very specific information about which barrel it was, where it was located, and how old it is. Because the 7 and the 13 are just sort of minimums, there actually can be some older product out there. I'm really looking forward to trying these. I haven't played around very much in the Baker's flavor profile. I've tried a lot of the other Beam products, but not Baker's. So let's get into it. Start with the 7-year, obviously. Oh man, right away you know it's Jim Beam too. That nuttiness on the nose. It's a giveaway. It's nutty like Booker's, but not nearly as pungent and strong. And it's less oaky for me than the Knob Creek. but it's got a lot more going on than the Basil Hayden. So you can really see how this fits into the space of the small batch collection for the Jim Beam product line. It feels weirdly dark in here, but we're gonna go with it anyway. Oh, try not to break any glassware while we're doing it. Anyway, okay. I mean, this particular version is just beautiful. I get like black cherries, I get peanuts, I get almonds, almond extract maybe. Oh, it's even a little bit floral, maybe a honeysuckle. Very pretty. I actually get a really distinct peanut brittle note. I noted the peanut before, but it's peanut attached to this sort of caramel-esque, toffee-esque sweetness, and it really presents like peanut brittle. It's beautiful on the nose. The thing that really stands out to me on this, though, is how much fruit there is in it. Most products that I've tasted and smelled, which focus that heavily on this sort of sweet, nutty quality, almost never have good fruit notes in it, but this one does. You get past that peanut brittle, you get past the honeysuckle, and then there's this beautiful, it's cherry, it's grape, maybe even like a peach quality, like a cooked peach. Now there is an oaky quality to this, but it's very subtle. It's sort of like walking into a hardware store where they have pieces of wood stretched out and you go over to the oak and you smell it and then you go, that's too expensive because the oak market is crazy. That joke won't age well, but happy 2021. Oh, I just poured it onto my mustache. That's fine. I'm just gonna leave it there, let it linger. I've just sat here and spent a ton of time nosing it, and I'm almost starting to get this sort of like chocolate, like unprocessed chocolate before they remove the almost metallic quality from it. Ooh, this is really cool. Let's go ahead and give it a taste and then we'll try and nose and taste the 13. Although I really want to nose it side by side, but I kind of want to taste it first. Let's taste it first. Right off the bat, I really like this as a proof point. Yeah, 107 really hits a good spot here with this one. Very oaky. This particular barrel is very heavily oaked. The nuttiness reminds me a lot more of a Booker's nuttiness than the sweet nuttiness I was getting on the nose. So it's a little bit drier. Definitely a peanut quality, maybe even a walnut quality, that kind of dry, slightly bitter nuttiness. The oak on it is really profound, but it's not dry oak. It's a bigger, richer, rounder oakiness that you'd kind of expect from a whiskey with more age on it, to be honest with you. Oh, when you really start chewing this, you get a lot of dark chocolate and some pecan. We're gonna move to the 13 in just a second, but sort of wrapping up the 7, I think it really presents like what Beam wants to do with an oaky, nutty whiskey. I'm a little disappointed there wasn't fruitiness on the palate because it was such a unique, complex meshing of nose notes, but you gotta get what they're gonna give you, and they're obviously trying to do a specific thing with this. It's not my favorite whiskey, but in terms of presenting that oaky, nutty palate, it does a fine job of that. A very, very nice whiskey in general, although I probably wouldn't pick it as my daily drinker. All right, this 13 year is much more sweet. It reminds me a lot of those older whiskeys I've had in the past. And by that I mean something from the 70s or 80s where you get this really nice, sharp, it's gotta be caramel sweetness. Wow, this really smells like something special. It's a little brighter too, or like lemon zest or maybe orange. It's a lot of cinnamon on the nose. This is much more sweet. Going back to the 7 year, wow, going back to the 7 year, it smells like baking spice, but oak, baking spice, and maybe a hint of nuttiness. Now, going into this, all of those beautiful notes from the 7 are amplified, and then they add on top of it this very thick, sappy sweetness. But there's still room for delicate notes. That's what's so crazy to me. I'm still getting like the lemon zest. I'm still getting the honeysuckle. I'm getting like a slight lavender quality. It's more floral than the 7 year, not as fruity on the nose. I'm getting maybe a hint of that cherry note again, and maybe a hint of like a raspberry, but they're pretty quiet. They're much more background on the nose than the 7 year was. All right, let's give this a taste. That took all of the harsh edges of the 7 year and smoothed them all out. It kept, ooh, and the finish, yes, it has a fruity finish. I freaking love that. Oh, baby, okay. It's got enough sweetness to help counteract that very dry, walnutty quality, but it still has that walnut. Definitely still has the peanut. But then the mid palate into the finish, you get this honey that shows up. And then there's this like blueberry or grape skin finish. Oh, that's so cool. I love seeing that fruitiness in the finish. I get more cinnamon on this. I get more black pepper on this. It's a lot more complex of a pour. This one is a lot more in my wheelhouse, to be honest with you. It has the oak, it has the nuttiness, but it's part of an orchestra. This feels like you just got a rhythm section. As much as I love the rhythm section, I need a little bit more going on. This is hitting on all cylinders for me. Wow. I'm definitely gonna buy one of these if I can find it for a not unreasonable price. Yeah, like I said before, lots of baking spice, still has the nuttiness, but it's much less peanutty to me than the 7-year. Floral notes show up. Into the mid palate, the sweetness comes out a lot more, and then it finishes with this sort of fresh berry quality. I would say raspberry and blueberry. Phenomenal, phenomenal whiskey. I love this 13-year. A lot more than I thought I would, to be honest with you, after trying the 7. But let's go back really quick. Yeah, the 7 just feels too oaked. It's a fine whiskey, but it's trying to do a more narrow thing than this whiskey is. And I will remind you, these are single barrels. All of these are single barrels, so take that with a grain of salt, because much like Blanton's from Buffalo Trace, some single barrels are really good, some are really not good. So if you're gonna be rolling the dice a little bit, but that can be fun, it's a little bit of a baker's lottery. You can buy a baker's dozen and try them all out. Bad jokes aside, I really like the 13. I think I will buy the 7 again to see if I can find one that looks more like this 13. But if I try 6, 7, or 8 and they're all more in this range, I probably won't be picking any more up. It's too similar to Knob Creek and a little bit less kick than what I get from the Knob Creek, which makes it attractive. So I think this is a fine whiskey. It's a very well-balanced whiskey, but it lives very deeply in the nuttiness and the oakiness. The 13 smooths out the rough edges, brings in a nice bouquet of other qualities that's just phenomenal. I gotta get out of here. My battery light is blinking at me, but thank you all for joining. And if you've got E.H. Taylor you want me to try, reach out to me at thedrinkpro@gmail.com. That's it for me, guys. Keep drinking like professionals. Cheers.